Well, hello and welcome to the Frustration of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Troy Eadie, and this podcast is all about revolutionizing the way that people think so that they can overcome their frustrations to achieve freedom. So today I've got with me Joe Seccull, and we're going to be talking about how we believe that robots will not replace compliance in accounting firms.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Troy. Thanks for the opportunity to come along and talk about it today. It's something I'm very passionate about. So I've got my own accounting practice. I'm in business with a few other guys, and we've got a reasonable sized practice and been doing it for a number of years. So I know the world accountants live in because I live in it myself. Yep. And I'm passionate about helping accountants get freedom in their business to live the lives that they want to lead.
Yeah. And look, that's one of the big reasons why, I've wanted to get you on the podcast today because, when did we meet each other? 2 years ago now?
Yeah, a few years. Yeah, maybe even a bit more.
Yeah. Time flies.
Yeah, it does.
The way that your firm is across multiple sites. So there's 3 sites in Melbourne, and the way that you were looking after your site, there was definitely a difference in how you ran the team, how the team responded to you, how much they were or weren't dependent on you. I really like the way that you approach it and the things that you've been implementing. So
thanks, mate. Yeah, it's and that's the core of it. That's the core of it is that we think that from what I see in firms, they're far too dependent on principals and partners and the owners in the business, and that's, I think, fine for a little while when the business is growing. But when you've got a team there to support you, why wouldn't you use that to actually help your client base to do bigger and better things, but also grow your team and then certainly help yourself to get out of your business to go and do other things, whether that be helping more clients or going pursuing other passions in your life.
Yeah,
so it's life's too short.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and now you've got 2 kids.
Exactly.
And I've got my first. So.
Yeah.
So look, do you want to clarify what I meant by the title?
Yeah. So it's really there's been a lot of talk in the industry and I think across the world. In most industries about robots taking over the world and taking over jobs and running the place. And accounting is ripe for that because obviously it's very automated, it's very systematic. So there's a lot of talk in the industry about robots taking over our jobs, and to a degree with programs like Xero and a lot of stuff going online and in the cloud. And they're great programs. It's already doing that now to the lower end of the bookkeeping side of it. So when I started accounting, we still used bank statements. We still manually entered everything. That hasn't happened for a number of years now. Yeah. But my view on that is that it can only go so far because accounting is, yes, data entry, numbers, tax, all those sort of things, but it's more, I think, about the human element of the relationship between the accountant and the client, and how that's managed in order to get the best result for the client, and that will never. I shouldn't say never. We were just talking before about that it will happen at some stage, but it will be a long time before I think that can be replaced by any sort of technology, that human relationship. And it's something I think that's not focused on enough in accounting firms.
That's right. Yeah, so look, the primary focus is really, between now and whenever that time happens, we still need to run an effective accounting firm. We need to be able to scale ourselves and then deliver advice, financial accountability and support to clients like we never have before. So it's like evolving with the times, but realizing we're not redundant, we're just becoming more valuable. Yes. I think that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, so from your perspective, maybe if we have a look at some of the challenges you see within the industry, and then we'll go into some of the steps that you would want to take people through to help them get an outcome. When you look at the accounting industry, what are some of the challenges that you either see yourself or been through yourself, from your perspective?
I think there's a couple of really big ones that are pretty obvious and have been out there for a little while. One is the lowering or the price pressure on compliance work. So given that it's getting more automated, clients have that expectation that it should be quicker, simpler, easier. There's a pressure. It becomes almost a commodity. So it becomes that whole thing of, well, if I can get it cheaper somewhere else, I'm going to go and do that. If it's seen as a commodity. So there's that one more on the compliance side of it, which has led to a lot of advisors and people coming out in the industry talking about value adding and offering other services. And we'll come back to that later because I don't think that's necessarily the answer.
Sure.
Secondly, holding on to team members, so holding on to really good people, which I think is common across all businesses, but certainly in accounting firms, once you get a hold of a good team member that's got great relationship building skills and is able to look after clients, you want to hold on to them as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, particularly, because our podcast goes out to predominantly businesses that have probably less than 60 odd team members or accounting firms. So, most people listening to this, sometimes you are losing that skill base to maybe a bigger firm that can potentially invest more, or they might be wanting to stretch their skills or do different types of work.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what a lot of it comes down to, I think, is that they don't feel challenged or supported in the business. I think that's where you see it. So it's like if you're doing any job, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, there'll be some people that are fine with that, but the people that are in there and those sort of people that
the ones you want to
before,
keep,
that they're not going to be interested in doing that necessarily for long periods of time. So they want to grow and progress, and generally the way you do that in our industry is to deal more with clients and talk to people and grow your skill base in that area. So that's important. And then the third one is the third biggest challenge I see is that I mentioned before about partners and owners getting really caught in the middle of their firm. They put people on to get work completed and done, but they still find themselves bang in the middle of the place, and everything comes to them. So they're just overwhelmed with things. And not only is that really poor from the owner's perspective, because obviously they're completely under the pump, unable to do anything, stressed often. It's not a great financial reward often because they can't do everything at once. They're trying to be everything to everyone. And I think secondly to that, it also it impacts the clients and the level of service that they get, which is obviously of paramount importance, is what we're talking about.
Particularly if they're taking on clients and can't deal with the capacity.
Yeah, that's right. So, and I think it's something I've been saying for a little while now, is that your greatest asset is in your business. It doesn't have to be bought in necessarily. It doesn't have to be bought. It's right there in front of you. It's your team and using them as effectively as possible. I just see it's just rife in the industry of people just underutilising their team members and underestimating what they can do. And also that whole value on, or that perceived value on technical skills and tax skills, when in reality we don't become partners or owners of businesses because we're great at doing tax returns. Quite often we become owners or partners in businesses because we're great at forming relationships with people. That's the key. Key to it.
And sometimes you might even have 3, 4, 5 partners, and there's still it's just multiple people that are in the center. So you'll have multiple wheels, and they're potentially still in the center, and they might just be teams under that person.
That's right.
Which creates all the same problems. It's just in a bigger firm.
That's right. Exactly. And the other issue with that is you've actually got, in that scenario, because I've lived this as well in the past in businesses I've been involved in, is you've got 3 or 4 accounting firms effectively operating under one roof. As a quasi firm, and in reality they're not. There's just 4 or 5 really busy people, and then all these other people running around trying to keep them happy and out of stress mode.
Clients still even just call directly to the partners and so forth. No, great, good. So look, if you can relate to any of those challenges, then what we're going to do now is Joseph's going to take us through his steps, or what you would recommend a firm take to be able to turn some of these things around, to grow the firm that I guess would be their goals, or what they want to achieve.
That's right. Because it's no different to what you talk about, Troy. Is you design and build your business, the business that you want. You don't allow that to just happen around you. It's got to be, you got to have a strategy. You got to design it, and then implement that, and then hold people to account and run through that way, and have a plan in place, and get it to where you want it to go to, not just where it ends up.
So what do you think, like, if you were to describe the ideal outcome, what would that look like for a firm?
So it's a couple of things. It's a partner or a principal that effectively has choice. So by no means am I saying, because a lot of people just like dealing with clients. I know I love dealing with clients. So I don't want to be taken out of the firm and just sit at home or sit on a beach somewhere. I want the choice to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So there's that for the partner or the principal, is that ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and add enormous value to the clients or to people around you in the way that you want to do it. A team that's
that's dynamic, that's consistent, that's there, that grows a real value in your business. So so you're not the business; the team is actually the business, and you've got people actually wanting to come and work for you. So as opposed to people wanting to get out the door, or trying to just fill seats. So that and clients that are happy and are falling over themselves to refer friends, family, colleagues into your business because they know and they're absolutely confident that you're going to look after them, and that they're going to get great service. So it sounds like a pretty ideal scenario for a lot of accountants.
Sure.
It may seem very difficult to achieve, but I think there's some steps we can go through that will enable them to get there pretty quickly. A lot quicker than they think.
Okay. So if we're going to start this, someone wanted to start this journey, what is the first step?
So I think the key thing is really understanding and sitting down with the partner or the principal and understanding why they got into business in the first place. What are they trying to achieve with their business? We're all accountants, but we're all accountants and for different reasons in different ways. So there's that perception out there that an accountant is an accountant, and that's not the case. People get into it for different reasons. People are specialists in different areas. We're all a little bit different. So and we all want a little bit different things. So we need to sit down and work out exactly what you want, because quite often what you want and what you've actually got are very different. They're very different things depending on the stage of the business. So sitting down and actually getting all this stuff out of the partner's head. So what do you want to deliver to the client? Who's your ideal client? Which is a bit of an overused term, but it's an important thing to understand who you actually want to help and service. And that might be a wide variety of people. It might be a number of them. But getting all that out, why you got into business in the first place and where you want to get to. So we need to know why, what was the drive behind getting there and what's going to drive you to get to where you want to get to now. How do you want to do it? Because until you know that and until you can actually put that out to your team, well, how are they ever going to live up to what you're wanting them to do without any guidelines? Other than here's a tax return, do it.
And if you find yourself kind of stuck or the firm is plateauing or there's no real direction, then this would be why.
Absolutely.
It's like the rudderless ship. So it's about just deciding for yourself, where do you want this firm to go, what part do you want to play in it. Like I know when we first came into your firm, we were having a look at each partner and what their strengths were. One partner might excel at bringing in new work, another partner or two might be great at supporting the team and building the systems to get the work out. But instead of having everyone responsible for everything, why not first of all decide what it is you want, and then what part you want to play in making those goals a reality.
That's right. And what's important? What's important to you? You're not building a firm for anyone else. You're building it for you to begin with. There's a little bit of selfishness. I think there's got to be a little bit of selfishness there. Design it for you, and then if the clients want that and your team want that, they're going to jump on board, aren't they? So don't build it for what other people want. Build it for what you want, because otherwise you end up with this thing that is other people's creation and is not. It might be something you're happy with, but it's less likely to be.
And one of the questions I like to ask is what do you want to be known for? Like, what's the firm want to be known for? Because I think a lot of everyone knows you've got to have an ideal client, or that's what they say, right? And in reality, you get a lot of questions like, "Oh, Troy, you don't understand," or "Joe, you don't understand. We've got clients from all industries," and it's not. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about the direction and what do you want to be known for. So, like right now, you might have a diverse client base, but if the goal is to reduce dependency, create a great team, systemize things, increase value of the business, and then to be known for something, to be a specialist at something, that really comes down to what you want to be known for. So like one of our clients has just recently. They're targeting specifically and have done a podcast with me on law firms. So the whole firm is unified around the next couple of months around getting 15 law firms on board, because it matches the skill set, matches the systems, and it's not to say they can't do the next industry, but it's very, very specific. And the direction is clear. And then in them, they want to be known for being great with law firms, which is not going to be hard to then change it to the next profession, like engineers or architects.
But just keep getting better at being great to law firms, whatever it is. But I think you're right. It's coming back to having control
and you making the call as to where you want to go, and thinking about that. So I just think people get caught up, and I'm guilty of it. Everyone's guilty of getting caught up in the day to day and just getting carried along. And it's okay and it's appropriate sometimes to allow that to happen. But when you're planning, when you're strategizing, and when you're building something, we're looking to build something that you're really proud of, you can't just be carried along.
Yeah. Great. So let's say once they've determined their direction, determined who they want to look after, what they want to be known for, and what part they want to play. What's the next step after that?
So it's then going down and saying, okay, well, if we can achieve all those things and we get these clients on board, and we get these particular clients on board, what are our expectations around servicing? So again, what my expectations will be versus yours versus anyone that's running any business will be slightly different, and that's okay. But if your team are going to help you, and if it's just you doing them, that's fine because you understand what they are. But if your team's going to help you to deliver that to your client base, because that's why you're in business, then you need to be able to get that down on a bit of paper or into a system somewhere so they understand exactly what. And it's getting down to things like, how quickly do we expect to get back to clients? Do we contact them via phone or email? Do we, what are the non-negotiables in our business that just have to happen in order to keep these clients happy? And on board and build and maintain that relationship. So it's getting those down on a bit of paper. And look, that there might be 50 of those, there might be 500. It just depends on the person. Hopefully there's not 500 because there's a hell of a lot of stuff there to sort of take in. But it's distilling that down to say, okay, if I'm a client, you're teaching your team, or creating a system that's going to teach your team to deal with a client how you deal with them. So talk about creating mini partners, and that's what that's about. Partners are great because they deal with clients on a individual level, and the client feels like they've got a relationship there.
And they've had all those years of experience.
That's right.
Of learning what not to do.
That's right. That's right. So it's getting that down and then putting that into a client journey or a map as to how you would, and with compliance work, and I'm talking about we're in a compliance firm. My firm's a compliance firm, or a lot of what we do is. So it's looking at an annual basis at a minimum, because obviously people do tax returns and financials on an annual basis, and saying, okay, what's their journey over 12 months, and then repeat, and how can we make that better? When do we need to talk to them about certain things? What do we need to talk to them about? How do we communicate with them? All those sort of things. And then understanding about, I suppose, their personality types, how some clients will require more contact than others. Some clients will want to be contacted in a certain way. Some people will want their wives called for their birthday. Some people won't. It just depends. And I think that's the essence of it, is understanding, giving them a good base, and then letting the person work out all those idiosyncrasies with separate clients.
So the key thing I'm taking, because I think most accounting firms, like when you ask them these questions, do they have their workflow mapped out or their client journey? Is their team clear on expectations? Typically the answer that you get is yes, but there's a yes and then there's a yes. What does it look like actually done properly?
And if you ask the staff, would they say yes?
Probably not. And that's where, and even if you have multiple partners in the room, you'll say some yes and then some no. And it's understanding the level of detail that you can actually go to with this, isn't it? And then the importance of that detail. Like I'll always, it's from, the coaching world teaches your psychology, shows you that humans typically have become who they are in the early stages of life. But if you want your team to be a lot like you, it comes back to those principles you talked about. Just instead of beating your head against a brick wall, it's just, well, let's document what makes Joe a great partner, and then be able to put that into a training and then give that to someone. Here's the expectation. This is how I get information that's outstanding. This is how I
because I'm not a magician. I'm not any different to anyone else. I don't have any special skill set that allows me to do that.
The magic phone?
That's right. That's the staff
in Joe's office, they joke about how he's got the magic phone.
That's right.
Because when he picks up the phone to call to get the information, somehow magically answers.
Exactly. They've been trying for weeks. Somehow they answer. But I think that's it's a funny anecdote, but it's true. Like there's little things that I do that unless the team know about those things, and we use anecdotes like that to help them understand. Okay, well, I don't just
they're not answering just because I rang them on this phone number. They're answering because of these reasons. I've set up a relationship. I've set up expectations with that person. They understand why we need this information. They understand what our expectations are. So it's all those things. It's not just because I've rung them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that comes into that.
Yeah.
And them understanding that. And believe it or not, over the past probably 18 months, 2 years, I've had to use a magic phone a lot less because the staff understand.
Yeah, good. Good. Yeah, and then, looking at the workflow underneath that, sometimes I find it's just enough there to complete the job versus, thinking right from, even if it was the acquisition of the client, right from the start, what are the key factors to setting up the relationship right, scoping it out effectively, setting the expectations, right through to starting the work, collecting the information, doing the work, and then finalising it all.
Because there's key points in all that.
Yeah.
That dictate, and quite often it's very early on in the journey. It's where you're winning that client confidence and the ability for them. They understand what you're all about and that what you're saying you're going to do. Because that's a big part of who I am and how I operate is integrity. So just understanding that if you say you're going to do something, you do that. You do that thing, and that's as simple as it is, really. So don't commit to doing something if you can't do it, and if you do commit to it, do it. If you just do that, clients will love you 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So when they come on board, obviously making sure it all lines up and that they're, what you're saying you're going to do, you do. So when they engage, when you first do your first piece of work, your 12-month anniversary, these are sort of things that we've learned actually dealing with you guys and with your business partner, Glenn, over time, is to say, well, that's where you, and once you get that past that point, then you've got them on board, you build up that Goodwill bank account, off you go.
Yeah.
But it's during those times, if you really service them in those points in time, that's when you start to get your referrals. You start to get, really great connection with that client pretty early on.
Yeah.
So they're important.
That's right. Yeah. And I normally find that workflow is typically documented and mapped out based on the requirements of the ATO versus what the client needs. My perspective around how bank accounts should be set up and how money should be managed in those bank accounts, which then flows through the P&L and the balance sheet, how often reconciliations should be done and when that should be reviewed. Those expectations are different to what would be ticking the right box for the government to be happy. Yeah. So I think if you do have that mapped out already and it's already ripping, we'll go back through it again and set the expectations in terms of what's best practice financial management, and see if anything changes within your workflow, right from when you give them, like when you're reviewing the budget versus the P&L, and when does that step happen? How does it happen? How much does that cost? Do you do it? Do you not?
Yep.
There's things like that, because I think that's really where I think the magic happens.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I think we can all agree that just ticking a box isn't great client service, and that's really what doing compliance, like what you said before about dates and ATO deadlines, that's ticking a box.
Yeah.
That's just doing the bare minimum. And look, clients will come to you for that and you'll have work to do, but are you going to build the firm I was talking about before? I wouldn't have thought so, because you're only doing the bare bones of what's required.
Yeah.
There's not a lot and that's where you bring yourself back to that commoditised sort of level. People have spoken about compliance being and this is where this whole robot thing comes in, compliance being a dead duck in the next few years, because the ATO will automate it. They will, the bookkeeping will get that good that people will just be able to lodge their own tax returns and do all that sort of thing. I think we're a fair way from that, is my own view. We're getting closer every day, but I think if you use those tools and what's being created there to actually help you run your business better and do better things for your clients, as opposed to just, I suppose, doomsdaying it and saying, well, this is taking my job.
Yeah.
That's, you really just, the way I look at it, it's allowing you to just do more valuable things for your clients and present more opportunities to them, because you don't have to do these things that you had to do 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And from my perspective, interesting to see what you think, it's these things. It's so ultimately we want to be able to teach our clients how to predict the future. So how do we do that? We need right numbers from KPIs, which KPIs flow through from the sales to the productivity, the costing, the P&L, the balance sheet, and so you got right from start to finish.
Yep.
So we know if we can look at the start of that pipeline, and those numbers are changing, we already know what that end outcome is going to be. So that's one of them. I think is just it's a powerful task. Sometimes we'll be working with our clients and say, hey, get your accountant to help you set up your KPIs so we can predict what the P&L and balance sheet is going to be like before it even happens, before it gets reconciled. Yep. But then things like, just a budget or a cash flow tool. I like to be able to, enter in, well, what if sales was different over the next 2 months, and then our expenses stayed relatively the same, so our profit would change, but then our cash flow in the bank would be different. Mm-hmm. And we've got these controls because we set the budget, we're updating the reconciliations regularly, we're matching the P&L. It's those sorts of things where us as business consultants and coaches, we really find that data valuable. And if we find it valuable, the most important person that will find it valuable is the client. And I think this is where the robot part comes in. Yep. Yeah, they'll all the reconciliations, the printing of the reports and collection of data is probably going to be there. But what does that data mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it's interesting. I noticed you spent 15 grand on a recruitment agent. So what happened there? Why? What was you thinking? Did it work? Did it, so it's the accountability on why you spent that money.
That's right. That's the value. And if you look back 10 years ago, that whole process from start to finish would have been, okay, the focus is we get the client's bank statement in and an invoice that says they spent money on a recruitment agency or travelled somewhere or did something that would give you an indication that they're perhaps either struggling or they're thinking about doing something that they haven't thought to tell you. And that's what we need to know, really, is what the client's thinking. We need a picture of their world so we can create that for them.
Yeah.
But it was all focused on just getting that compliance bit done. Get a bank statement in, enter it in, do we claim GST or not, all that sort of stuff. And then do the financials, do the tax return, and then we might sort of ask at the end about, well, why did you spend that money there? Whereas now the robot world and automation has allowed all that to happen right up to the point where we just check it and lodge it. So that time we were spending here that was not really of any value to anyone other than just ticking a box and making it nice and neat and tidy is done. The question is where do you shift that time?
Yeah,
we shift it in front of finalising it to say, okay, well, we're onto this now. So what you're talking about before about information being relevant to clients, people can't use information of financial nature 6, 12, 18 months after it's happened. It's just a lag indicator of it's just telling them something they already know.
Yeah.
So you sit down with your accountant, you've lost money, you've done your financials for the year before after Christmas. Yeah, you lost money last year.
Yeah.
Well, I know that. So I got no money in the bank and I'm struggling. But why didn't you tell me that 7 months ago?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have your information. So it's really just about making sure you're in front of that, and instead of lag indicators, they're lead indicators. So why did those things happen in the first place? So there's nothing. These are all basic accounting principles, KPIs, all those sort of things. They're just normally just numbers. So they're not anything too major or new.
Yeah,
they're really just holding people to account then and there, as opposed to after the fact, and then they can do something about it.
And I find a lot of accountants, even the accountants listening, the firms listening, everyone knows this stuff. Like even setting up the bank account. So you've got your everyday, you've got another one set up for your PAYG, tax and super. You might have overdrafts or whatever. So there's a healthy way to structure it so that when you look at the bank account, you just don't see $400,000 and think, oh, that's all mine. Yep. That it's spread out. So what happens is typically we know we should do that. But we've got too much work on at the moment. We just need to get it out and just do so there's not enough capacity in the team to even, it's a choice. You're sitting there in the computer and you identify something, but you don't have time to really deal with it. You don't have time to book another meeting, drive out to their office, take them through their P&L and balance sheet and show them, and that's what causes the problem.
Yeah, it is. And it just gets bigger and bigger from there, because then you get more clients and the same thing happens. You get less time, more time starved in your team. So I think there's a couple of things with that. One is that's that whole thing about just being carried along, and that's what happens because we're busy and we're under the pump and we don't have time. So we just allow that to happen. We'll deal with that at some stage in the future when time arises, and we all know what happens when we let that happen. It just doesn't ever turn up. So we let that happen, and then we also
as I said before, we underutilise our staff. So whilst the capacity is full up in the firm, are we using our staff to the best of their ability?
Yeah.
Quite often not.
No.
So if we put some systems in place and we create expectations and we have something that we follow and the team understand all those things we spoke about before, starting right at the top, from a leadership point of view, and we give them the expectation and head it down, they'll start to pick those things up for you. They'll start to deal with clients. They'll start to have some of those conversations.
Yep.
Then another part to this, obviously, which is a difficult thing for people to get their head around, is that there'll be some clients that just aren't the right clients for you, and that they will actually prevent you from being able to service the clients that want your help, that need your help.
Yeah, which is why it really comes down to what it is that you really want. You need to want something, because that sets context around where you spend your time, who you do and don't serve.
That's right.
Yeah, things like that.
Because if you're running a firm that's on constant busy mode, this system I'm talking about, it will not work, because it does require you to sit back, smell the roses, design it, and then do it.
Yeah.
So you can't do that with millions of clients. You've got to service the right clients.
Yeah.
And don't take clients on if you can't help them.
Yeah. So for me, that client journey is almost, I don't know, it's very, very, very important. Like, I think a lot of accountants will say, I've got a workflow in place, but does that client journey or does that workflow really set the expectations up properly? Does it collect information? Does it then use the reports to give the client the effective amount of information? Like there's definitely some clients we work with that I just get given the report, and I don't really need to talk to anyone. I can see the indicators, what's going up, what's going down, open up. I can see the 12-month budget. I can see where things are at. I can see what is in each bank account, and then I can see a projection of how much cash is going to be in the bank, and then I can see a projection of every liability that they have. So it could be suppliers, could be ATO debt, BAS, the whole lot, but it's a projection. And I don't even have to be there.
Yep.
And I've got full control over the client. I can make predictions now around what I think the client should be doing.
Yep.
And I think that sometimes the belief in the accountant is they don't value this stuff. We're doing a whole bunch of extra work and we're not going to get paid for it. But I think mapping out that journey and setting the expectation up front, this is how you want to ride. And once they experience it, they're going to be happy to pay.
Absolutely, and this comes back to what we were talking about before about commoditising and that whole value add proposition that's come into the industry over the past 10 years, which is that people are not willing to pay for tax, pay premium dollars for tax. It's a commodity now, so you need to do other things to add value to them. So you need to do budgeting, coaching, advisory stuff in your practice. The reality is that a lot of accounting firms and a lot of accountants struggle with some of that. It's a different skill set altogether from doing numbers and compliance. Some don't, some do it, and they do it really well, and that's fantastic. Yeah. But I think, there's all this scare stuff out there about compliance is dead. I don't think compliance is dead. I don't think it'll be dead for a long, long time. No. You can have a really great, profitable compliance business, and the value that you add is really just the relationship and the confidence that the client has in you. Yeah. So you don't have to necessarily add on all these other services that people may or may not want. Yep. You might want to do that as well, but I think the value is in the relationship and the care that you show the client. That's my that's what I think draws me to your style when working with accounting firms is, people are trying to get them to do something that's not the core. You've got compliance. And then you've got self-managed super funds, you've got business advisory or coaching, and people are trying to stretch you apart. But that moves you away from being a specialist. That dilutes your focus. And I like your approach because it's about staying focused on what you do so that you can scale it, make it more profitable, be more efficient. And, it's going to help you achieve that ideal outcome better than diversifying your efforts and becoming, spokes in more wheels. Yeah. That's right. Exactly. And it's simple to achieve too, because you don't need that. You don't need to go and necessarily. You should always be upskilling yourself across the board anyway, but you don't need to go and develop new skills, chuck yourself out of your comfort zone too far, because the reality is with this stuff is it's going to be change. What I'm talking about in the program we use is going to be change anyway. So that's difficult enough to begin with. But to go and do something you've never done before and try that on clients that you've got a relationship in the first place, with all the fears around, I'm not confident in this, I'm struggling with it. That's a hard thing to do. So why would you put yourself through that if you don't?
Well, again, it's the same for...
It's not your design, don't do it.
That's right. Well, it's the same for us. We have our trusted suppliers. We don't even attempt to do compliance. So it's the same for accountants. They'll have their trusted suppliers. You do what you do really well, and you have that team around you. So, it's getting clear on the direction. It's then getting really clear on those systems and that client journey. And then the third part to wrap it up is...
So you've then obviously, once you've got all that, you've got to filter that down to the team. So there's obviously no use in creating this great program and client journey and all that sort of stuff if you just hold it in your own head and for your own purpose, because it's already there. So how do we get it out amongst the team, and how do we then provide them the training that they need to be able to do this to run that journey with the client? So it's creating a learning management system to then be able to take them through start to finish. So when a person comes on board at your firm, whether they be an experienced accountant, admin, whatever they're doing, they understand exactly what's expected and what their role is within that.
And that's a good example of how to use technology actually help you. Like ideally, your team members will come on board, they get a username and password, and they can watch, but gone are the days where operations manuals and just checklists and workflows just on the desk work. If you're ever wondering, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I've got the direction, I've got the workflow in place, but it's not working, it's probably because these days everyone goes home, they're on their phones. They're watching YouTube, they're watching Facebook. So what really needs to happen is you need to have your business in a box, so that they can go on their phone and they can watch the steps, set it up and automate it.
And they've got to be clear. They've got to want to do that, and that's why how many businesses do you go into where you ask the client, if they, I'm sure you experience this in your role, where have you got an operations manual or some sort of, and they pull this dusty thick thing out from the bottom drawer and chuck it on the table and go, here's our operations manual, and you sort of think to yourself, when was the last time anyone ever looked at that? And it just becomes this is how we do it around here type scenario within their practice. And again, that comes back to that, you're just going around in circles.
So what we've done is we've put together a bit of a health check or a checklist that you can go through, and you can see what you don't have, and then whatever you do have, you can rank, how effective is it. So, we've done a lot of talking today, but if you wanted to implement it yourself, you can go through all of these items and see what you do and don't have. Rob, if you can make sure that it's available for the people, maybe you can click on a link and then be able to download it, and then fill in that checklist, and maybe you can let us know how you went with it. Ideally you can start from the top of that checklist and start implementing.
That's what it's there for. It's practical stuff. This is not just, it's all well and good to talk and to strategize over things, but until you actually put it into practice and start using it, it's really just, you're really just talking about it. It's not getting you anywhere. So
good. I think like particularly accountants, very, very knowledgeable, highly educated. It's not about more education. It's about getting it done. That's why I love working with accountants, because you already know what needs to be done. It's just sometimes it's just forcing the time to get it done. So, look, thank you very much for coming.
That's okay.
We're both speaking at the Accounting Expo coming up again, so that's going to be exciting. On this topic. Thank you again for coming, and look forward to seeing you at the Accounting Expo.
Fantastic.
Good on you.
Thanks.
Thank you.